Hi, hello everyone. Welcome. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon from Tel Aviv. Welcome everybody to this exciting special webinar in our regularly scheduled time slot. Sunday evening here in Israel, end of the day of the beginning of the week. We have a special webinar today. Already have close to 50 people. Hello, Michael. Thank you for starting us off, and Sarit in Beersheba. Miroslav, as always, in Belgrade. Thanks everybody for coming in. This is going to be very special for us tonight, for Dan Alone and I, because we were just in the States. I was also in Canada for a few days and met so many of you. We met people in everywhere we went. We met people who told us that they were fans of the webinar and knew us from the webinars. So it's great to be back. And we just had the idea we had a cancellation tonight, or a postponement. That's a webinar on mammals that will be upcoming. But for today, we're going to be talking about Nature Israel in the States and what it's like to visit, and talk about wetland rewilding, things that we've been talking about and trying to raise money and support for. Dan Alone and I in the last couple weeks across the States. Meanwhile, welcome everybody from, gosh, so many places here already. I'll mention that you're seeing on the screen now some slides that'll kind of give you an idea of the types of support we're looking for. Monthly support is always something that NGOs are looking for, and especially coming to visit Israel. Israel is open, tourism is back, and if you donate, we have a benefits ladder and all kinds of special benefits for supporters of $1,000 and more on a yearly basis, or any $1,000 donation gets you a free, really behind-the-scenes tour in one of our sites, and the benefit ladder includes a half-day or a full-day tour, and we appreciate any and all support, though. So just want to let you guys know we're open, we're ready for business. We're doing a lot of travel agency stuff on a private basis. I mean, just people are contacting us from all over the place that they're coming to Israel this summer, and we're hooking them up with nature visits. And we're running a tour in November. I think Jonathan will be talking about that a little as well. This November and the coming March, we time our nature tours to be at the peak migration moments in Israel. So everybody is assured spectacular vistas and views and experiences in the Hula Valley, but not just. Now it'll be in Kfar Rupin and in Magan Michael, the places where we are turning failing or abandoned fish ponds into wetland nature reserves. Avi, thank you very much in Toronto, the CEO of Canadian Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, doing back office as usual, in a very dedicated manner every Sunday afternoon in Canada. And Avi just put up a link to donations in the chat feature. So please, if you're so inclined, anything helps. Good evening from Bordeaux, France. Love your wines. And we're going to be getting going here in just a minute. What time is it now? For some reason I'm not seeing a clock here. We'll be getting going in just about a minute. I want to thank all our supporters, everybody that Dan and I met, scores of you in 4 or 5 or 6 states around the country. Sadie will be taking notes on an app. Well, that's very interesting. Seems like an upgrade to the whole webinar experience. It's like being in class and somebody's taking notes for you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the support from our members, and especially from our board members. Very hardworking board members in all over the United States now. Jonathan Silverstein, the new chair of Nature Israel, who will be with us in a few minutes. I mean, he's with us already listening, but he has been revamping, revitalizing, really revolutionizing the board and its operations of Nature Israel, formerly known as American Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel. We thank them and our boards in Canada and in London and in France, and of course in Israel. We hope to see you here. We're looking forward very much to engaging with you on this webinar, and we'll get moving. So thanks everybody. We're up to 75, 80 participants on online. I don't know on the Zoom. I don't know who's on Facebook, but welcome the Facebook crowd. Avi, thanks so much for the slides. And so we're just going to be talking today. We'll be showing a video. You know, those of you on Zoom can adjust your screen so you're seeing me or with the main speaker. Judy Katz, yes, if you're giving in America and you want to know, I'm just reading the chats as they're coming in. Yes, if you want to know about your donations, its history, things like that, you can contact Robin Gordon in her Great Neck home office, and we will let you know what you need to know. Anyway, so Dan Alone, who is the new Deputy CEO of SPNI for Nature Conservation and a longtime director of the birding unit of SPNI called BirdLife Israel. We just came back from Dan was there for a little over 2 weeks. I was there for almost 3 weeks, a trip to the United States. And as I mentioned before, I went to Canada. But 2 intense weeks in the States and a few days in Canada gave us a great picture of what's going on among our supporters. I think we talked to a lot of people about the main reason we're in the States, which is to raise money, not just for SPNI in general, but of course we do so many things in SPNI, protecting nature in so many ways and in so many habitats. And in addition to nature protection in the hardcore sense, we work on environmental education and the culture of hiking in Israel and getting people out to nature in our field schools. But nature protection is our core business. We lobby and we plan and we sit on planning committees and we do field studies and we do surveys of urban nature. And we do 101 things to protect Israel's amazing, amazing biodiversity. And that's what I talked about briefly, usually when we met. And Dan introduced Startup Nature to audiences all over North America. Startup Nature is our wetlands rewilding project, and I'll let Dan talk about that a little bit. I'm sure some of you at least are familiar with it, and but it's always changing. We're getting a lot of great feedback, good results on the ground, and good feedback from authorities in Israel. It's very, very exciting. So it was exciting to go to the States and talk about it. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of what we did. I'm going to ask Jonathan, our chairman, to give his some of his impressions. Jonathan flew out from Austin to New York for several days of our visit, and was with us at an exciting public event we had in Westport, Connecticut, in the public library with his childhood friend Alan Shanzer, one of our board members as well, from TNEC. And so we'll hear about that in just a minute. I'll just give you an overview first, that Dan and I flew directly to San Francisco from Israel, and we had meetings there in the city of San Francisco in several places, and in Oakland, out in Marin County, and down in Palo Alto, trying to hit various communities of Israel supporters. We had a parlor meeting at the home of Abe and Marion Sofer, longtime generous donors to SPNI, opened their home, actually their backyard, to about 35 people who came to hear us talk. And we really had a great kickoff to that event. That was actually on Mother's Day of this year, late in the afternoon. And the other things we did were private meetings and parlor meetings and other parlor meetings, smaller meetings in a home in Marin County. And we met some of our most generous donors in Oakland. And we met a couple foundations as well. And that's basically what we tended to do throughout our visits. We had parlor meetings in people's homes. We had some public events, and we met both private individuals and foundation representatives, trying to hit on all the ways we can possibly garner support for really what is a historic wetlands rewilding project. I think one of the most incredible things. Well, you'll hear me talk about it on the video if you haven't seen this 4-minute video yet. So that's what we did. We did that in San Francisco in the Bay Area for 5 days, and we were out for 3 days in New Mexico. Yes, people always ask us, what, you visited New Mexico? Yeah, we have 2 incredible board members there, fundraising committee members, Rabbi Paul Citron in Albuquerque and Dan Pava, and a retired environmental planner in Santa Fe. So we visited both those cities. We were back and forth between Albuquerque and Santa Fe a couple times. Again, meeting some very generous supporters who live in that area. And we had a well-attended public event at a synagogue in Albuquerque, a large Reform synagogue. And we see that as a very interesting place to develop, very interesting Jewish community and off the beaten track. 2 Israelis show up there. It's more of a kind of an event. Then we went to New York. We had an actual week in New York. Started off with a morning bird walk in Central Park. Incredible. I'll just I'll give you a quick preview. I think we saw 19 species of birds on that walk. We probably had about 20 people walking, maybe 25. So we were kind of noisy, and only saw 19 species of birds, which I guess wasn't bad. But Dan told me he went out the next day and he saw twice that number on his own, or at least he heard them and recognized them. So great times in Central Park. And we had all kinds of meetings in New York. I think Jonathan might talk about a couple of them. Again, donors, supporters, foundations, and included a parlor meeting at the home of Leon Sokol, our longtime respected chairman of ASPNI, co-chair with Russell Rothman, and I was going to say Robinson, and who's the chairman of JNF. But we had a really lovely event in Leon's home, Leon and Maggie Kaplan in Tenafly, and a really interesting public event in Westport, Jonathan might relate to, or Dan, large gathering in a really spanking new modern library. And it was a lot of fun. We talked to people about local environmental issues and all kinds of things. Dan went home after that week in New York. I went on to Toronto for a few days, met with Avi and the board in SPNI and some of our big donors there, including, of course, the Goldbergs, who are behind really among the most important founders and catalysts of this whole wetland rewilding project. So with no further ado for me, I would like to, and before I introduce Dan to talk about wetlands rewilding, just ask Jonathan to chime in with some of his remarks. It's great to have Jonathan on the board. It's great to work with him, and it's great that he took the time and effort to fly out to New York with Jessica Lewis, a new director of ASPNI, who's also based in Austin. They flew out both to New York, so it was great seeing you, Jonathan. And I hope you had as good time in New York as we did.
It was extremely special, and thanks everybody for being on this webinar and for all of those that attended all those events that Jay mentioned. I think we're getting into a really nice rhythm with Jay and Dan visiting at least twice a year, and I think it's coordinating very nicely with the board development. So I think one of the things that many people don't know is that the ASPNI board, which is or organization, has been around since 1986. So while next year SPNI is going to be celebrating its 70th year, which is amazing, we're going to be celebrating our 37th. I think Jay mentioned both Russell Rothman and Leon Sokol. Leon Sokol I've known since I was I think 1 or 2 years old. It's a real honor to not only have been on this board since 2018, but as of September of last year, to have the torch passed from Leon and Russell to myself and Sean Sweeney, who's the vice chairman, and Lisa Ching, who's the treasurer. And I think the biggest adjustment may have just come from COVID as one of those silver linings, the world adopting to this technology of Zoom and enabling us to expand our board beyond what was traditionally sort of the tri-state area of those friends of those that founded and stood up ASPNI. We're now in not only the tri-state area, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Vermont, those areas, but now Chicago, New Mexico, as you mentioned, Austin, Texas, Baltimore, Maryland, and LA, and we're looking to be a truly national represented board. And there's other segmentation that we're looking at where we're not just only Jewish. There are many board members and those representatives, committee members that really are centrally focused on nature and caring about Israel. And now it's becoming more about tapping into the ingenuity and innovativeness of those in Israel, specifically around the protection of nature in all its aspects. So we see ourselves as a real facilitator and awareness generator of the brilliance that is going on. And many of the things that you'll see today, as far as what we've talked about, the rewilding efforts, Startup Nature, et cetera, there's really wonderful that not only do we have a lot more to talk about, but we have vehicles now to be able to communicate them more effectively. We've added a new wonderful ad agency that is really bought into who we are, what we do, and really recognize that the special nature of SPNI. So we can talk a little bit about that. Jay mentioned we did add another employee. So while all members of the board are lay, we're all volunteer. We do have 2 employees. Robin Gordon, who has been mentioned earlier, as the individual. She's the director of donor relations. So she really has been keeping things together for the last 30 years. And now we've added Jessica Lewis, happens to be in Austin. We stole her away from Hillel Birthright. She's phenomenal. Has a passion for Israel, like very few I've seen, and committed to this, making sure the story of Israel is told well, and loves the fact that she is able to tell it through a nature lens. So she had her first trip to meet with many of the people she's spoken with over the last 6 months. She started in January, and she's been a jolt of technological know-how. She runs our database management and our agency, Red Rooster Group.
Thank you, Jonathan, and we'll get back to you. But people are anxious to hear from Dan, who has been birding across North America. While I was out eating breakfast, Dan was out birding at dawn every day, wherever we were. And he can talk about that as well. But I'd really like him to talk about the project that he spoke about so passionately throughout North America. And Dan, maybe we'll start with the brief video and its update. Are we sharing? It worked a minute ago, folks. I don't know what that pylon means.
Dan, we cannot see the video.
Dan, are you watching it? We're just seeing a pylon in the screen. Oh, is it? I think it's loading slowly. Weird. It always happens when you practice just before it begins. Yeah, I see it is loading slowly. Let's see how slowly. Sorry for this, folks. And, I'm sorry for those of you that have been waiting long for this. We're actually haven't lost any people, 1 or 2 maybe from the peak. Still about 80 people on the Zoom. And we just wanted to let you know that, we're out here not just protecting nature, but we're trying to get the funds that are necessary to do it. And we appreciate your willingness to listen, and both in person and when we have events in your area. I wanted to mention, if anybody would like to host an event, just let us know, and we will try to incorporate your area into a future trip. And not just Dan and I, but there are other professionals, Amir Balaban, who many of you know. Dan, are we still trying to do this? What's going on?
I don't know. I hear you all the time.
Yeah, no, but we're not seeing anything.
Hey, Jay.
Yeah.
While Dan is doing that, there's a question that came in from Murray asking, how is Nature Israel? Oh, video's gone. Maybe we can get to it later. How we're different from JNF. I think that's a good question.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Can you see now?
No, there's nothing. I'm not sharing anything yet. It looked like it started to share, but then it stopped at the pylon, which I think meant it was loading or something. Buffering, I don't know. But in the meanwhile, I'll just answer the very important question. JNF-US is a behemoth NGO which supports many worthy, interesting projects in Israel, from fire and rescue services to special needs to education, but unfortunately they also support JNF KKL, Karen Kamal Israel, of their flesh and blood. And Kakal, unfortunately, is still planting the wrong trees in the wrong way in the wrong areas, and acts essentially like a real estate. It is essentially a real estate development corporation that owns 13% of the land of Israel. Oh,
okay.
No, but we're still seeing a pylon. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Oh, but we're not hearing it though. Oh my God, it just worked. Feels like a connection problem.
Israel is well known as the startup nation for its high tech and research, but very few know that Israel is also one of Earth's top biodiversity hotspots. How we protect and restore nature here matters around the world. My dream is for Israel to use.
We're not really hearing it. Oh, yeah, I think we'll have to do this without a video. Is anybody hearing it? Jonathan, Avi?
No, it freezes and it breaks up.
Yeah, no. Sorry, guys. Dan, why don't you just tell us about it?
Okay. What about it? Okay, so let me speak a little bit about startup nature and wetland recreation. Israel, I would say, lost most of its wetlands in the last century. Actually, a big part of our wetlands has been drainage at the very early, before Israel was created in 1920, 1930. And then in 1953, the Hula was drained. And most of the wetlands of Israel has unfortunately not exist anymore. If, let's say 100 years ago, Israel had about 50,000 acres of wetland. Today we have about 2,500 acres, which is 5%. And unfortunately, this is the case for many years. And for many years, there were some kind of, I would say, compensations for these wetlands. For example, reservoirs for sewage water, and also fish ponds. In the last, and they were, I would say, hold some biodiversity, and especially fish ponds was very good for the migratory birds that migrants from Europe and Asia to Africa and back from Africa in the spring. And but in the last about 30 years, these fish ponds become very unfriendly for birds and for habitat and for biodiversity. They become very intensive. Not much vegetation. Water quality was not good. Lots of the fish ponds look very square, very empty. They still have some birds and some biodiversity, but it become poorest than it was before. Few years ago, I realized that we have a chance to put our hands on some of these fish ponds because business is not as good as it was before. Raising fish in Israel in 20, 30 years ago was good business for some of the kibbutzim, but not anymore due to some circumstances like the price of water price become higher, and the most important thing was reducing of importing tax on fish importing from China, and this is where fish pond suddenly become not so good business. And we realized that this is an opportunity for us to work together with the owner of the fish ponds, with the sub-owner of the fish ponds, which is lease these fish ponds for long term. I'm speaking about minimum of 25 years. Hopefully, it will be more than that. It will be forever. Taking care of these fish ponds by restoring the ecological, taking care of the reshape the fish ponds, if you want. Put some vegetation, clean water, etc., and recreate a habitat which Israel lost 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 70 years ago, and Israel needs so much. We need it for our local biodiversity, and especially for hundreds of millions of migrating birds that migrate every year from Europe and Asia down to Africa and back from Africa in the spring. These birds, these hundreds of species of birds, and as I say, hundreds of millions of them all together, needs places to stop, to rest, to forage, and fish ponds wetland is very important part of this puzzle. So we started with 2 sites, one in Kfar Upin, near the Jordan River in the eastern part of Israel, near Kibbutz Kfar Upin, an area of 50 acres, which is now growing to 70 acres, and hopefully in the future, we will have much more area there. Maybe even 200 or 250, maybe even 300 acre in the future. And the second place is Magan Michael on the Mediterranean coast, near the Crocodile Creek, one of the purest freshwater stream in the western part of Israel. This is again a site of about 50 acres with a potential to grow much more than that. The site in Magan Michael, in Kfar Upin, in the east near the Jordan River, is already operating, fully functioning. Just in April, before I left to the US, in one morning, I counted 92 species of birds in this small area. So it's fully functioning. It's not only birds, also jungle cats, and jackals, and foxes, and fishes, and insects, and many other and very diverse biodiversity. The site in Magan Michael is now under construction. We are now making the habitat restoration and hope to finalize it by October. Maybe it will take another month. So by the end of this year, we will have 2 functioning sites, one in the eastern part of Israel on the Jordan River. The other one is on the Mediterranean coast. And this is a kind of a dream come true, bringing the wetlands, rewild the wetlands of Israel. And hopefully after these 2 sites, and after we will raise the money to make sure that we can operate and maintain these 2 sites for forever, we will start working on more sites, same model, taking fish ponds, making restoration with the help of the government, and maintain them for the future with the help of philanthropic money that we raise here in Israel, but also in the US and Canada and other places, from people who care about nature and care about Israel and care about our biodiversity and wetlands and nature and bird migration. And like I said, it's a dream come true. I would say I had the pleasure to be one of few that help the creation of the park in the Chula, the Chula Agmon. I was there researching crane, but at the same time helping to create these sites and watch the process of wetland become real, become rewild. And here we are, we do it again, and hope to have much bigger sites, much more of these sites in the future. So thank you everybody for your help.
Thank you, Dan. Avi, can you try to share that video now from the link I put in, or from, I sent it to you and it finally went through. I was having an email problem.
See it featured in the chat.
Yeah, he has it in there as well. Okay, see if it works now. Thank you, Avi. It's good. Everybody make sure you're seeing the right screen.
Israel is well known as the startup nation for its high tech and research, But very few know that Israel is also one of Earth's top biodiversity hotspots. How we protect and restore nature here matters around the world. My dream is for Israel to use our innovative spirit to restore nature, bringing us and the world to a much better place than where we started. This is the vision of Startup Nature. Israel lies at the junction of one of the world's largest flyways. Twice each year, hundreds of millions of birds stop here on their migration between Europe, Asia, and Africa. And every year, 400,000 people come to witness this natural wonder. Without Israel's wetlands, these birds would not have enough food and water to survive their harsh journey of thousands of miles. But as one of the smallest yet fastest growing countries in the world, our wetlands are disappearing. Now the future of these birds and the nature of 3 continents is in our hands.
For bird migration, this is one of the most important places in the world in the junction of 3 continents. The potential to develop research, tourism, education here can make us a top leader in the Middle East and in the entire world.
Israel is taking the lead, demonstrating that rewilding these places, we can not only bring birds back, but also repair our relationship with nature.
Startup Nature seizes a unique opportunity to transform unused agricultural lands into fully functioning wetland habitats, and then build them into a network of world-class wildlife sanctuaries. We'll be preserving one of the world's most important bird migration fly routes and generating millions of dollars for the local economy now and for generations to come. The first 2 sites, Kfar Rupin and Magan Michael, will save millions of birds a year and attract 150,000 tourists from Israel and around the world to these regions. Each site will connect people to wildlife and help us promote a greater love and understanding of nature, of the environment, and of the shared future that we have. This, to me, is one of the most visionary projects on the planet today.
This is such an amazing opportunity to bring my kids to be part of this experience where Israel is hosting millions of birds from around the world.
Startup Nature will be a major source of revenue for my business and for the other businesses in the area.
Startup Nature represents the best of what Israel is: vision, innovation, and the Jewish values of humanity and responsibility.
SPNI for 60 years has been the leading policy and planning conservation organization in Israel. I was very impressed with their vision, their commitment, their efficiency, and their success. I'm committed to this project because I know it's doable and its impact will be of global significance to the preservation of nature.
Right now, Israel has a unique opportunity to show that it is possible for a nation to grow while restoring nature. Your partnership means that Israel can establish a better, more sustainable way to live together. Your contribution to Startup Nature will secure the future of the flyway and uphold our nation's responsibility to our people, our shared nature, and all of humanity.
Thank you, Avi, and my bad, because it was not the updated version of that film. There's actually 2 minutes more at the end of it. And Dan, why don't you just tell us about that? I don't know. I thought I had that correct updated version of the film, but I guess I put in the wrong link. But it showed that film was made 6 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago. I don't remember. How long ago, Dan?
A year ago, exactly.
A year ago. So last month, about 5 weeks ago, we went out to both the Kfar Rupin and Magan Michael sites with Dan and with Iris, our CEO, and and filmed another couple minutes showing the incredible changes at Kfar Rupin and the beginning of the changes at Magan Michael, which is the second one in our plan. So Dan, why don't you just tell us what we missed and how things are going? What have we learned? What have the authorities learned from this project?
Well, we missed the beautiful drone filming from Kfar Rupin, a beautiful wetland, like I say, fully functioning, lots of birds, have his own water supply. We don't need to pump water. We have a stream going straight into the wetland, so everything is fully ecological functioning. And also it shows the work at our new sites in Magan Michael. About the authority, few excellent news that we just received is one, Jay, you don't know about it even. Today there was a meeting in Kfar Rupin, and we probably got a permission for another beautiful sites, 400 acre, just near Kfar Rupin. Today the meeting was about how we managed to get fresh water to these sites. It was a very positive meeting with the authority, and hopefully we will get water for free, which is part of the what we need there. And the other very good news is just a day after I returned from the US, we managed to convince the Israeli government to invest in this project in the year of 2023, next year, 20 million shekel, about $6 million in restoration of new sites, which bring us a new challenge.
Wow.
Because the government is helping us to restore, but we still need to maintain and to pay all the expenses of these sites for the future. And this is our big challenge here. This is start of nature. So the government is become a major player here, but we need a lot of support to complete this project.
Wow, that's amazing news, Dan. So Kfar Rupin will, we hope, eventually become a kibbutz surrounded by wetlands. A kibbutz in a wetlands. I was in Toronto. I've been to Toronto many, many times, but just this time I learned.
A climate kibbutz.
A climate kibbutz. Well, I thought of this in Toronto. I was just there, and I learned that one of the mottos or slogans of the city is a city in a park, because of these two big parks that come up from the lake that sort of surround Toronto. And there are a lot of green spaces in the city of Toronto. But if they can have a city in a park, we can have a kibbutz in a reserve. I think that's a great new breakthrough in the world. And I mean, and the fact the government is behind it, and that's an amazing thing. And as you say, it does present an ongoing challenge, because while the government will be participating in the startup costs, the actual wetlands restoration and the rewilding, the ongoing maintenance and keeping it accessible to the public are things that's why we're trying to raise money for an endowment. But thank you very much. We will send, I don't know why we don't have the updated version, but we will make sure you all can see that if you would like. And we do have lots of questions. Jonathan, any of the questions that you've seen that you want to relate to now, or would you like to say anything else? More impressions of the trip, or how you saw things?
Well, I think that there's a couple of questions that we should address given the video and what Dan just shared. So the questions that are coming in that I see that I think is really important is, If we restore wetlands, meaning the whole rewilding project Startup Nature, how do we control disease-bearing mosquitoes is the question that's coming up. And I think that's maybe that's something that Dan can address first. And then I think there are a few questions around how we differ from JNF. I think if we hit those two, I think that'll satisfy a lot of stuff. And then I'm happy to kind of come in and share a lot more than what's going on with Nature Israel here in the US.
Okay, well, I'll just say very briefly about JNF. Again, JNF, Israel is, SPNI is an Israeli-based nature conservation organization. That's what we do. We're a government watchdog. We're an NGO, a non-governmental organization. Kakal, JNF in Israel, is a quasi-governmental organization that is essentially a real estate development corporation, owns 13% of the land of Israel, and develops that land as it sees fit. It is the de facto, although not de jure, forestry service of Israel, and has been planting the wrong trees in the wrong places for a long time, and we fight them tooth and nail on that. JNF in the US is a mega NGO in the US that does a lot of great stuff in Israel, but it doesn't do nature conservation in Israel. In its nature conservation activities, it supports largely the Kakal in that bad tree planting. And so we encourage you, please don't plant any tree with the JNF. If you must plant a tree, plant the right trees in the right habitats, and we can help you do that in, for example, one of our wetlands where we do plant some indigenous trees. That's JNF in a nutshell, and I believe me, I can do a whole webinar on that, and we have. But yeah, Dan, there are a bunch of questions from the more scientific nature. You can answer about the mosquitoes if we have to control them. And then there's some other questions we can get to.
It was not a problem here. It's we don't live in Canada or northern USA, or we don't have such big problem of mosquitoes. So no, it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm. Our friend George Kirby in Boston is asking, as we design the fish ponds as natural habitats, could we also include bike trails? I actually haven't heard that that's a plan in these wetlands, but maybe as they get bigger.
We don't plan bike trail. We do plan hiking trail or trails for people to walk. I assume that around Kfar Upin, biking will be possible. We don't need to plan any trail for that. You can just use the exist trails. In Magan Michael, there is a plan for a bike trail, maybe in the future.
Okay.
But I must say that the sites will be open for people to visit. We will try to manage it because we don't want too many people to come at the same time. We want it to be very, very well managed, but it will be open for people to visit both sites and hopefully also the sites.
Okay. Listen, Miroslav asked a question I think a lot of people wonder about. Can you briefly review the main steps it takes to restore a wetland from a fish pond? And is there a problem with feral cats and dogs? But hit that main question first.
Okay. So the steps is one, taking off the water that was used for raising fish, and then reshape the fish ponds. We don't want these squares. We would like a more complicated design. We would like to make some changing at the bottom of the pond, and then the second step will be creating a water source. It can be a creek or a stream that going directly into the wetlands. We prefer not to use any pump. So this will be the second part. The third part, in some places, we will add some vegetation. It can be scrub or other things, not big trees. And we are not going to be a very intensive planting, just a very minor one, and then fill it with water and let the nature do its work. That's the way it's worked. Regarding dogs and cats, cats is a problem in Israel. Unfortunately, Kfar Ipin is quite remote, and there are not so many cats. Around Magan Michael, unfortunately, there are feral cats, and this is something we will need to see how to deal with that. It is a problem in Israel, not only in our new wetland. A feral dog, again, is also a problem in Israel, but in a different areas, not near our wetlands, especially up in the Golan and down in the Negev, where there are cattle and sheep and things like that. So yes, it's a problem for Israel, but not for the wetlands.
Thank you. Listen, people, you're more likely to get a question answered if you write it in the question and answer feature and not the chat, because that's just complicated for all of us. I do want to relate to a couple questions in the chat, though. One of them is Michael Goodman just makes a comment. It's not a question, but it is an invitation for me to answer. Michael writes, don't forget that draining the swamps was viewed as a positive change back then. Well, Michael, yes, in general by Zionism, but not by a very important dedicated group of local kibbutznikim, scientists, academics, a small group who protested the draining of the swamps on ecological grounds. You just don't drain wetlands in a semi-arid country. And by the way, malaria was not an issue. I don't know if it was you that asked that, but malaria is not an issue in Israel today, nor was it an issue in Israel in 1953. We'd already pretty much eliminated malaria by then. So not everybody viewed it as positive, and the people that didn't view it as positive actually were the founders of SPNI, and that is our origin story. We were founded on the draining of the wetlands, and we are coming full circle to recreate wetlands. Not in the Chula, that was partially recreated based on our lobbying and Dan Alone's work in the 1990s. But in this decade, we are rewilding another 5 or 6 areas. Hopefully each one of them will be the size of the Chula, or maybe 8 or 10 areas. And that'll be a huge boon for bird migration, for habitats all over the migration fly route, and especially for Israel and our biodiversity. Another question is the difference between donating to Startup Nature or SPNI. No, Startup Nature is a project of SPNI, and it's just a question of designating your gift within your donation to SPNI. So the donation link is the same, and we don't have a specific link yet, but we know if you're donating during this webinar or immediately afterwards, you'll probably intend the money to go to Startup Nature. But certainly if you want to send a check or let us know in the dedication online that it is for Startup Nature, we'll be sure to approve it to that. But we're also raising money for everything else we do, and our treasurer, CFO, loves general support. So that is that. Jonathan, we have about 5 minutes left, and I'd like to give you the last word. If there's anything else you want to say, or any questions that you have, or we left things unanswered. So.
Obviously, there's a lot of things in the United States that we're doing to support SPNI, as we have since '86. But given digital technology, there's a couple things coming up. One, we're going to be expanding Nature Israel tours. So in addition to the 2 times a year sort of mission trips to take advantage of migration fly routes and have literally a bird's eye view of what's going on, and with the expertise of Dan and the team. So we'll be getting that up on the website of those trips, both in November and March, but then new trips that are going to be coming that provide a wider opportunity to tap into and understand the amazing things that are happening in Israel around nature. Just wanted to share a quick story about what happened over the last couple of weeks. If you missed it, perhaps we can get the article link from the Times of Israel, which featured the activity that's going on at Kfar Rupin from a scientific and as a beneficial statement of what's going on in our partnership with Terra. And I won't go into the details, but it starts talking about the notion of carbon credits and sort of the rewilding of the land for all the benefits that Dan described. But it caught the eye of a gentleman in Virginia, Michael Rolband, who's the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. He's the director there. And it was so important that they reached out to a gentleman, Dov Hawk, who's the executive director of Virginia Israeli Advisory Board. And we ended up meeting with him while we were in New York. He came up and met with us. And the spirit was he wanted to understand what we're doing and potentially how the state of Virginia could start creating a similar type of program in the state of Virginia, not only to preserve and protect important natural wetlands, not only for bird migrations, but for all the benefits that rewilding does, and establish a carbon credit system. So just wanted you to know that in the United States that we're getting the word out about this activity. And I wanted to give a shout out. He's on the call right now. Ira May, one of our newest board members out of Baltimore. He's had conversations and ongoing conversations with Dov about that and other programs. So it's not just about fundraising. It's about making sure that people understand that what's happening in Israel affects not just Israel, but the intelligence and expertise and scientific approaches are going to be able to export to the United States and other areas to combat climate change and other benefits that are going to become more obvious. So I just wanted to mention that. And then if it's possible, I don't know, Avi, if you've already done it, if we can get the newest updated version of the video on so people can capture that link, that would be terrific. But again, you can reach out to Robin at natureisrael.org, and we can get you that link at some point. You know, there are folks, I love the energy that's been happening on the chat and the Q&A. If people would like to get involved with Nature Israel, we're always looking for committee members and even board members. It is not just about getting donations, although that's a significant way in which SPNI gets to do what the things they need to do. But there's a growing active element of making sure people in the United States know about SPNI. So you can reach out to me at jonathan@natureisrael.org, and I'd love to connect with you.
That's great. Thank you, Jonathan. Couple minutes left, and yes, Avi is about to put up on the chat the link to the Times of Israel article you just referenced about carbon offsets, maybe a new revenue stream for us. There you go. And many people are asking about the mission, and we will have that up online tomorrow with prices. The itinerary is. We will have the itinerary and prices tomorrow. It's November 6th to the 10th this November. It'll be again in, I think, the third week in March. I don't have the dates right now. And we'll have that information online tomorrow on our website, natureisrael.org. There's a drop down that says Explore Nature Israel, which is what you want to do, And the first or second drop down under that, it says November 2022 mission. Right now it's skeletal, but it'll be all ready tomorrow. So and please, if you're interested in that, let us know and sign up. We're giving discounts for people who register early by July 31st. So if you have a week to give in really just 5 days, and then you have lots of time to do other fun stuff in Israel as well. But the nature trips are very, very special, very insider behind the scenes look at a lot of nature issues that you wouldn't get on other kinds of trips. So thank you very much, Avi, for putting that up, or whoever just did. And I know there are lots of unanswered questions. I think you all know how to reach out to all of us for any other questions. We're at the top of the hour, so I want to respect everybody's time. Thank Dan Alone very, very much for another evening of work here, and great work with the wetland story. It's really quite a story. Jonathan, thank you so much. You and your colleagues, your lay colleagues and professional colleagues in Nature Israel in the States. Appreciate very much you guys schlepping out to New York and being with us for the very fun Westport event and all the donor visits. Thanks to Avi in Canada and to everybody out there for joining us, for participating tonight, and for your support and interest always. See you again in a couple weeks this time. Thanks so much, Heidi, for that final comment, and everybody. Appreciate it very much.
Really appreciate it. Really terrific.
And Chag Sameach to everybody.
Chag Sameach, which Chag?
Shavuot?
Oh, that, yes, because it's Memorial Day too. I was wondering. Thank you. America.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.